We are in the chapter TDS. The next section for discussion is section 194I. The payment covered by the section is income by way of rent. The payee should be a resident. Payer may be anybody, but if the payer is individual or HUF, the TDS obligation under 195I arises only when such individual or HUF was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. And the TDS obligation under this section arises only when the income by way of rent is more than rupees 2,40,000. Amount paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited by way of rent during the financial year should be greater than 2,40,000. Then the payer has TDS obligation under which section? 194I. And the TDS rate is depending upon the asset for which the rent is paid. If the rent is for use of land, building, furniture or fittings, the TDS rate is 10%. But if the rent is for use of plant, machinery or equipment, then the TDS rate is 2%. Tax shall be deducted at source at the time of payment or at the time of credit to the account of the payee in the books of accounts of the payer, whichever is earlier. To consolidate the discussion, 194I applies when the payment is income by way of rent and the payee is a resident and payer is anybody, but if the payer is individual or HUF, the TDS obligation under 194I arises only when that individual or HUF was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. For any person other than individual or HUF, there is TDS obligation under 194I, irrespective of whether that person was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year or not. Fine. The TDS obligation under this section arises only when the amount paid by way of rent or credited, or amount to be paid or likely to be paid or credited or likely to be credited during the financial year is crossing 2,40,000. The threshold limit is 2,40,000. Then only there is TDS obligation. The TDS rate is 10% if the rent is for use of land, building, furniture or fittings. It is 2% if the rent is for use of plant, machinery or equipment. And this is subject to provisions of section 206AA. Subject to provisions of section 206AA. The timing of TDS is tax shall be deducted at source at the time of credit to the account of the payee in the books of accounts of the payer or at the time of payment, whichever is earlier. Where the real estate investment trust lets out its immovable properties and it is earning rent, on such rent the payer, the tenant, has no TDS obligation. Why? Because this rent is exempt in the hands of real estate investment trust. Therefore, the tenant has no obligation to deduct tax at source. This is given in third proviso to 194I. This was already discussed when I discussed the chapter business trust. It's a revision. Next is the term rent is defined. Rent means payment for use of land, building, machinery, plant, equipment, furniture and fittings under lease or sublease or tenancy or any other agreement or arrangement. So what is rent? Rent means payment for what? For use of land, building, machinery, plant, equipment or furnitures and fixtures under lease, sublease, tenancy or any other agreement or arrangement. You may choose to call rent by the term rent or by any other name. Nomenclature is not important. Substance is important. Is it a payment for use of these assets? You should see. If it is yes, it is rent, even though it is called by a different name. Okay. These assets may be allowed to be used either separately or together. Still the payment received is rent. Still the payment is rent. Okay. Now see these illustrations to get grip. Mr. X leases out a building to Y and Y subleases this building, subleases the building, okay, to Z. To whom? To Z. The building is sublet to Z. The building is sublet to Mr. Z. In this case, Y will be paying rent to X, Z will be paying rent to Y. Both, okay, should be subject to TDS under 194I. Both shall be subject to TDS under section 194I. Why? Because, okay, this is also a payment for use of building. This is also payment for use of building. Okay, so it may be under lease or sublease also. Sublease also. It is not that the payee should be owner of the asset. Need not be. Okay, so the right to use it may be accorded under the arrangement of lease or sublease or tenancy or any other agreement or arrangement. So Z, when he is paying rent to Y as TDS obligation under 194I, Y, when he is paying rent to X, is having TDS obligation under 194I. Next is X is leasing out the factory building, okay, along with plant and machinery to Y under an inseparable agreement. Under an inseparable agreement. What is inseparable agreement? Letting of factory building is inseparable from letting of plant and machinery. Okay, that means either, okay, see, the Y has to take both factory building as well as plant and machinery, or he cannot take anything. Letting of factory building is inseparable from letting of plant and machinery. And Mr. X is charging a composite rent. Is charging a composite rent. That means factory building is let out to Y along with plant and machinery. Okay, further a composite rent comes. Still this composite rent shall be subjected to TDS under 194I. So payment may be for use of land, building, machinery, plant, equipment, furniture and fixtures either separately or together. Either separately or together. Though it's a composite rent, this shall be disintegrated into, okay, the rent attributable to factory building and rent attributable to plant and machinery. Rent attributable to factory building, okay, shall be subjected to TDS at the rate of 10%. Rent attributable to plant and machinery shall be subjected to TDS under 194A at the rate of 2%. Fine. Now, following issues are requiring attention. Where, okay, cooling charges are paid to the owner of cold store plant. Where cooling charges are paid to the owner of cold store plant. And the cooling charges are paid for what? For preservation of perishable items stored in it. Milk, milk products, meat, okay, poultry products, marine products, okay, etc. These are all perishable. To preserve them, to ensure longevity of life, these are stored in the cold store plant. For that, to the person operating the cold store plant, cooling charges are paid. Okay, are they in the nature of rent? Should they be subjected to TDS under 194I? This is the issue. Okay, and clarification is there from CBDT through circular 1/2008. Main function of a cold store plant is preservation. Storage is incidental. Storage is incidental. No right to use any demarcated space or place or machinery of cold store plant is available. See, we don't, by paying cooling charges, we don't get any right to use any demarcated space or place or machinery for cold store. Machinery for cold store. So, no right to use any demarcated space or place or demarcated machinery for machinery of the cold store we are getting. So, cooling charges can't be regarded as rent. Cooling charges can't be regarded as rent. Accordingly, 194I cannot be invoked. Okay, TDS provisions under 194I shall not apply. These cooling charges are contractual payments. They shall be subjected to TDS under 194C. Under 194C. So, one line summary is, the main function of cold store plant is what? Preservation. Storage is done something which is incidental. Okay, we don't have any right to use any demarcated space or place of cold store or demarcated machinery of cold store. So, cooling charges cannot be regarded as rent. Okay, TDS will not come under 194I. These cooling charges are contractual payments. They shall be subjected to TDS under 194C, not under 194I. Sorry. Now, listen to this. Landlord is there, tenant is there, tenant is a business house. The landlord is letting out a commercial building. Lets out commercial building to whom? To the tenant, which is a business house. For that, the tenant, the business house will pay rent. And the landlord will also collect GST in addition to that. Will collect GST. So, here the landlord will not only get rent, will also collect GST. The tenant has obligation to deduct tax only on the rental portion, not on the GST. So, the TDS rate shall be applied only on the rent portion, not on the GST. Why? Because how the section starts. Okay, you have TDS obligation only when the payment is income by way of rent. GST is not income of the landlord. Landlord is only the collecting agency for the government. So, GST is collected by the landlord on behalf of the government and it is remitted to the government. So, a landlord is only the collecting agency, it is not income of the landlord. So, therefore, we need to apply the TDS rate only on the rent and not on the GST component. This is what given here. So, TDS only on rent component. This is what the circular has clarified. Circular 23/2017. No TDS on GST component. GST is not income by way of rent. Next is CBDT circular 35/2016, where the property is taken on lease. At the inception of the lease, the lessee will be paying lease premium or salami money to the lessor. It's a one-time payment made to the lessor. For what? For getting leasehold rights in the land or building. This is not rent. This is a capital receipt for the lessee. Okay, so this is a one-time payment. We call it as lease premium, lump sum one-time payment, lease premium, salami money. This is paid for acquiring long-term leasehold rights over land or building. It's a payment made for getting a capital asset. Long-term leasehold rights over land or building itself is a capital asset. So for procuring it, we are making this payment for the lessee, for the owner of the land or building. This is a capital receipt. This is not at all income. This is not having the character of rent. This is not a payment for using the land or building. For that we pay lease rental separately. So therefore on this salami money lease premium, there is no obligation to deduct tax at source under 194I. That you need to understand. Next is Japan Airlines Limited Supreme Court, Singapore Airlines Limited Supreme Court. So two judgments from Supreme Court. Airline companies pay landing and parking fee to Airport Authority of India. Airline company pays landing and parking fee to whom? Airport Authority of India. This landing and parking fee, does it come under 194I? Should it be subjected to TDS under 194I? This is the issue. The answer is this landing and parking fee is not paid for use of airport land. It is not paid for use of airport land. This doesn't have the character of rent. This shall not be subjected to TDS under 194I. In fact, this payment is for what? For multivarious services and facilities provided by Airport Authority of India in order to ensure safety of passengers pursuant to international protocol. Airport Authority of India, pursuant to international protocol, in order to ensure the safety of the passengers, is providing various facilities and services to the airline companies. For that, it is collecting landing and parking fee. You should not be misguided by the nomenclature. The real purpose behind collecting this amount should be understood. The spirit should be known. So here, usage of airport land is incidental. This is not a payment for usage of airport land. This is a payment made by the airline companies for various facilities and services which are which are provided by the Airport Authority of India. So therefore, this shall not be subjected to TDS under 194I. What services or facilities are provided? Air traffic services, ground safety services, especially when the aircraft takes off or when it is landing, so many precautions are to be taken. So many services are provided for safe landing and safe takeoff. For that only that amount is paid to the Airport Authority of India. Air traffic services, ground safety services, aeronautical communication facilities, installation and maintenance of navigational aids and meteorological services. For these services and facilities, the amount is collected. So, this landing and parking fee includes various charges: landing charges, lighting charges, aerodrome control charges, aircraft parking charges, aerobridge charges, hangar charges, passenger service charges, cargo charges, etc. So, this is not just payment for use of airport land. For multivarious services and facilities provided by Airport Authority of India, this is paid. So therefore, this doesn't come within the ambit of section 194I. Next is Senior Manager SBI Allahabad High Court judgment. Mr. X and Mr. Y, they jointly own a house property. They have 50-50 stake in this house property. This house property is let out to Z. This house property is let out to Z for 30,000 rupees per month. For how much? 30,000. So Z every month pays 15,000 to X and 15,000 to Y by way of account pay check. Z Limited pays 15,000 per month to X, 15,000 per month to Y by way of account pay check. Separate checks are given. Okay, to the co-owners. Okay, X is getting a separate check, Y is getting a separate check. Now a doubt comes. Now listen to me. 15,000 into 12. 15,000 into 12 is 1,80,000, correct? Which is less than 2,40,000. Here also 15,000 into 12 is 1,80,000, which is less than 2,40,000. So, if you apply the threshold limit of 2,40,000 to rent paid to each co-owner separately, the rent doesn't cross, okay, the threshold limit. But if you see for the property, the rent is what? 30,000. 30,000 into 12 is what? 3,60,000, which is more than the threshold limit of 2,40,000. So, whether the threshold limit is to be applied in respect of rent paid to each co-owner separately, or should it be applied in respect of rent for the property as a whole? This is the issue, to decide whether TDS under 194I comes or not. Payment to each co-owner is less than threshold limit. Therefore, there is no TDS obligation under 194I. There is no TDS obligation. This threshold limit of 2,40,000 should be compared with the payment made to each co-owner. If it is not crossing the threshold limit, there is no TDS obligation. Okay, why? Because, okay, if you go through section 26 of the Income Tax Act, okay, it clearly says where the share of the co-owners in the property is definite and ascertainable, the income from the house property can't be taxed in the hands of co-owners as an AOP. Respective share in the house property income should be included in the respective person's income sheet separately. It should be taxed in their, okay, in their personal capacity, in their individual capacity. Okay, so therefore, you should not think that, okay, X and Y together constitute an AOP and this rent is paid to AOP, though through two different checks payment is made, it is only made to an AOP. That thinking should not come to you. This is co-owners, when they have share in the property which is definite and ascertainable, income from house property can't be taxed in their hands as an AOP. Respective share shall be taxed in the hands of respective co-owners in their individual capacity. Therefore, the threshold limit contemplated in 194I should be compared with the payment made to each co-owner separately to decide as to whether the TDS provisions are applicable. In this case, amount paid to X is 1,80,000, not crossing 2,40,000. Amount paid to Y is 1,80,000, not crossing 2,40,000. Therefore, there is no TDS obligation. No, the position is same even though the property is not divided by meets and bounds. They have definite share, that's enough. Where you are paying warehousing charges for usage of warehouse or godown, you are paying warehousing charges, that is obviously rent. It shall be subjected to TDS under 194I. It shall be subjected to TDS under 194I. Where the payee of rent is government, or where the payee of rent is RBI, or where the payee of rent is mutual fund, or the payee of rent is a statutory corporation whose total income is exempt, then there is no TDS obligation under 194I. Okay, there is no TDS obligation. CBDT Circular 699. CBDT Circular 699. Next is see this example. X Limited is the landlord, Y Limited is the tenant, Running financial year is 1920. Running financial year is 1920. A building is given on rent. Building is given on rent. The rent was earlier 10,000 per month. It has been increased to 15,000 per month on 1st April 2019 with retrospective effect from 1st April 2000 the rent was earlier 9,000 vachikala. The rent was 9,000 per month. This is increased to 15,000 per month on 1st April 2019 with retrospective effect from 1st April 2018. 1st April 2018. Now, current financial year's rent 15,000 into 12, 1,80,000. Arrears of rent pertaining to earlier financial year 18-19. Earlier financial year 18-19. It is what? 6,000 into 12. 72,000. 72,000. This is arrears of rent pertaining to earlier financial year. This comes to 2,52,000. Amount received is 2,52,000 or amount to be received. So now if you consider the current year's rent alone 1,80,000, this is less than the threshold limit. But if you add also the arrears of rent of earlier year but crystallized in the current year, received in the current year 72,000, if you add it, this is more than the threshold limit of 2,40,000. More than the threshold limit of 2,40,000. Okay, what should we do? Should we deduct tax at source under 194I or not? Whether the tenant Y Limited is having TDS obligation under 194I? Answer is yes. Y Limited has TDS obligation. Why? Because even arrears of rent is nothing but the consideration for use of building. It is in the nature of rent only. So therefore, okay, there is TDS obligation. So this is what you need to note. Even on arrears of rent pertaining to earlier years crystallized in the current financial year, okay, there is TDS obligation under 194I. There is TDS obligation under section 194I. For that only this illustration is given. Next is CBDT Circular 5/2002. Where payment is made for hotel accommodation taken on regular basis. Where payment is made for hotel accommodation taken on regular basis, then that becomes rent. On that there is a TDS obligation under 194I. 194I. So, where you are making payment for hotel accommodation taken on regular basis, then that comes within the ambit of 194I, there is a TDS obligation. But when can we say payment is made for hotel accommodation taken on regular basis, where the hotel authorities are providing you earmarked rooms for a specified period at a specified rate, then the payment is made for hotel accommodation taken on regular basis. For example, see this, KS Academy is starting a branch in Vijayawada nu vechikalam. So, there CPT classes, that is foundation classes, inter classes, CA final classes are being conducted. Correct? So, KS Academy is setting up a branch in Vijayawada and it is conducting classes for foundation, inter and final. So, the faculties, they go to Vijayawada for handling classes. So, the faculty should stay there, na? So, with some hotel XYZ, there is an arrangement whereby in this hotel 2 rooms are booked, room 101 and 102. These 2 rooms are earmarked for KS Academy's faculties throughout the year. It is booked throughout the year for the KS Academy faculties. Because, okay, at any point of time in the year, some classes will be conducted in Vijayawada. Okay, some Chennai faculty will be there. Okay, they will be shuttling between Chennai and Vijayawada. Certainly, some faculties will be there in Vijayawada throughout the year handling classes. Correct? So, 2 rooms, room 101 and 102 are earmarked for KS Academy. For that, some amount is paid by KS Academy. So, this is what, where the hotel authorities are providing you earmarked rooms for a specified period at a specified rate. Correct? The hotel accommodation is taken on regular basis. For that, you are making payment. If KS Academy is making payment to the hotel, that payment shall be subjected to TDS under 194I. Sorry. I am slightly changing the facts. In Vijayawada, classes are not throughout the week. The classes will be conducted only during Friday, Saturday and Sunday, weekend only. Okay, the classes will start, okay, in the Friday evening. And Sunday morning and evening will be class. Saturday morning and evening there will be classes. So, the faculties will start from Chennai Friday morning, they will reach Vijayawada in the afternoon, okay, and they will be ready for evening classes, stay there for Saturday and Sunday, handle the lectures, Sunday night they will catch the train, Monday morning they will come to Chennai. This is the model. So, here also every week we need hotel accommodation, but the hotel authorities cannot tell we give you room 101 and 102 because you are going to use these rooms only for 3 days. For 3 days in a week they cannot commit 2 rooms, okay, exclusively for you. Okay, the hotel authorities are telling you come, we ensure that you get 2 rooms, but we will not tell you will be getting only these 2 rooms. We will tell you will get 2 rooms. Rooms are not earmarked, but we promise you that we give you rooms throughout the year. Friday, Saturday and Sunday you will be getting rooms at this rate. Then also where earmarked rooms are not made available, but hotel has obligation to provide room during the currency of agreement at a specified rate, then also the hotel accommodation is taken on a regular basis. The difference is earmarked rooms are made available here. Here no such earmarked rooms are made available, but hotel has obligation to provide you rooms during the currency of agreement at a specified rate. Then also the hotel accommodation is taken on regular basis. For that, when you make a payment, that should be subjected to TDS under 194I. Next is, see, travel agents, tour operators, corporate employers, they will enter into rate contracts. They will enter into what? Rate contracts with hotels, major hotels in different cities, with major hotels in Chennai, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Cochin, Mumbai, Delhi, Calcutta. Rate contracts are entered into. Reason enna theriyuma? So your client, if you are in travel agency business or you are a tour operator, your client may be approaching you, okay, not only for booking tickets, he requires room in the place where to which he is going to travel. So you will be providing the services. You will book tickets for him. You will book rooms in the hotels for him. Then you will arrange cars for him to travel within the city to which he has travelled. You will provide guide. So various services are provided by travel agent or tour operators to their clients, right from booking tickets, booking rooms in the hotel, arranging cars and providing guide, etc. Correct? So these travel agents, tour operators, corporate employers, okay, when they require rooms in which hotel, in which city, they cannot know now. Okay, in the earlier case, KS Academy is operating only in Vijayawada, apart from Chennai. So it knows that its faculty will be there either throughout the year in Vijayawada or at least in the weekend in Vijayawada. Predictability is there. But for a tour operator or travel agent, okay, which client will go to which city for how many days, we don't know. So therefore, the travel agent, tour operators or corporate employers, they do enter into rate contract with major hotels. What is rate contract na? See, whenever, with different hotels in different cities, we enter into rate contract. When a rate contract is entered into, the hotel has no obligation to provide rooms. But if rooms are available, they will provide you. The understanding or the agreement is only in respect of the tariff. Okay, in this year, if we are booking rooms, okay, this should be the rate. It cannot go beyond this. Vacation season or the room rate will be more. Okay, off season or the room rate will be less. It fluctuates na. Okay, the rate contract, if it is entered into, we insulate from such variations. Throughout the year, whenever we are booking rooms, this should be the rate. It cannot cross this rate. We enter into an agreement with the major hotels, okay, and it is only in respect of the rate. It is only in respect of the rate. Correct? Hotels, they don't have obligation to provide rooms, which was the case in the earlier case studies. Correct? But here, no obligation to provide room. Rooms are available, they will provide at this rate. The understanding is only in respect of the tariff. This is called rate contract. Where a rate contract is entered into with hotels, there is an agreement fixing a lower tariff rate for hotel accommodation for a specified period. The hotel has no obligation to provide rooms. If rooms are available, they will provide at this rate. Then this is not taking hotel accommodation on a regular basis. The payment made thereunder is not liable to TDS under 194I. Where there is only rate contract, question of deducting tax at source on such payments doesn't arise. CBDT circular 5/2002. See, the employees are on tour or auditors are visiting different branches of the client company, or consultant also travels to the head office or branch for providing consultancy. Correct? So when they travel, they stay in the hotel and they make payment to the hotel. Subsequently, they get it reimbursed from the client company or employer company. If you are in marketing division, if you are an employee in marketing division, you will be frequently undertaking official tours. You will stay in hotels. You make payment to the hotel, subsequently get the amount reimbursed from the employer company. Or if you are an auditor or client, if you are on a tour for your client, if you stay in a hotel, you make payment to the hotel, later on you get it reimbursed from the client. When the client or employer company is reimbursing to the employee, auditor or consultant, this is not a payment made to the hotel, this is only reimbursement. This shall not be subjected to TDS under 194I. Next is section 194IB. 194IB. This is TDS on payment of rent by certain individuals or HUF. Certain individuals are HUF. What is the payment covered by 194IB? Here also it is income by way of rent. It is what? Income by way of rent. 194I also rent, here also rent, but there is a difference. Here also a payee is resident, there also a payee is resident. There, if the payer is individual or HUF, such individual should have been liable to tax audit the immediately preceding financial year. Then only that payer has TDS obligation. Here, and payer can be anybody other than individual HUF also. But here the payer is individual or HUF. Not every individual or HUF who is not liable to tax audit the immediately preceding financial year. If the payer individual was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year, and when he is paying rent, this section will not come. Which section will come? That section, 184I shall come. But if the payer is individual or HUF, not liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year, 194I will not come. What will come? 194IB will come. Subject to other conditions. Subject to other conditions. So what is payment? Income by way of rent. Who is the payee? Resident. Who is the payer? Individual or HUF, not liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. Not liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. That payer has TDS obligation. That payer has TDS obligation. At what rate? At the rate of 5%. But when TDS obligation arises, where the monthly rent is exceeding 50,000, there the threshold limit is 2,40,000, that is for the rent for the entire year. Here the threshold limit is for each month rent. Where the monthly rent is more than 50,000, then only there is a TDS obligation. When tax shall be deducted at source, the tax shall be deducted at source, at the time of credit or payment of rent for the last month of the previous year. That means, in 194I, the TDS obligation was there whenever you paid rent or whenever you gave credit for the rent. Here, the TDS obligation arises in this section only once in the year, and that too, when you are giving credit for the last month rent or when you are paying last month rent, at that time, whichever is earlier only, there is a TDS obligation. The TDS obligation comes only in the last month. That too in respect of rent credited in the last month or rent paid in the last month. Okay, for that only there is a TDS obligation. TDS under this section is only once in the previous year. We will be deducting the tax at source, okay, out of last month TDS. But we will not be applying the TDS rate only on the last month rent. On the entire rent, we apply the TDS rate and we withhold out of the last month rent. So, at the time of credit or the time of payment of rent for the last month of the previous year, whichever is earlier. In the last month, you will be giving credit for the rent, or you will be making payment, whichever is earlier. Okay, at that time, tax shall be deducted at source. But where the tenant is vacating in the middle of the financial year, then the tenant, before he vacates, okay, in the last month of tenancy, he has to deduct tax at source. So, tax shall be deducted at source at the time of credit or payment of rent for the last month of tenancy if the property is vacated during the year. That you need to understand. So, the TDS under this section is only one time in the previous year. For deducting tax at source under this section, payer need not have TAN. It is enough if he is having PAN. It is enough if the payer has PAN. See, the TDS rate we don't apply only on the last month rent. The TDS rate is applied on the aggregate amount of rent paid or credited during the previous year. But the TDS is withheld out of the last month rent. Deduction is only once in the previous year. Where the payee has no PAN, 206 AA comes, and we shall be using 20%, not 5%. Now there is a possibility the TDS under 194 IB, by applying 20%, if you quantify the TDS under 194 IB, and if it is more than the last month rent, you should restrict it to last month rent. A payee has no PAN here. The TDS rate is 20%. On the aggregate amount of rent paid or credit during the previous year, you apply 20%. On that rent, the TDS is more than the last month rent. And we are going to withhold only out of the last month rent. The TDS is more than the last month rent. In that case, we restrict the TDS to last month rent, only to last month rent. And the scope of the term rent is narrower in 194 IB. Here rent means payment for use of land, building or both under lease, sublease, tenancy or any other agreement or arrangement. இங்கே plant, machinery, equipment, furniture, fittings எல்லாம் இல்லை. Okay, rent means payment for use of land, building or both under lease, sublease, tenancy or any other agreement or arrangement. That's all. And the tax deducted at source under 194 IB shall be remitted to the credit of government. Okay, within what time? Within 30th of the next month. Okay, if you are deducting tax at source in the month of March, okay, then it should be remitted to the credit of government within 30th April. Correct? So, in which month tax is deducted, leave that month. Within 30th of the next month, the deducted tax should be remitted to the credit of government. That way you need to understand. So, where the payment is income by way of rent, payee is resident, payer is an individual or HF not liable to tax on it in the immediately preceding financial year, and the rent per month is crossing 50,000, the payer has TDS obligation at the rate of 5%. Okay, on the entire rent for the year, you apply 5%, you withhold out of the last month rent. So tax shall be deducted only once, and it is at the time of credit or the time of payment of rent for the last month of the previous year, whichever is earlier. Or where the tenant is vacating the property during the year, the tax shall be deducted at source by the tenant at the time of credit or payment of rent for the last month of the tenancy. Correct? And payer need not have TAN, it is enough if he is having PAN. And if the payee has no PAN and the TDS rate is 20% as per 206 AA, if you apply on this rent paid during the year, and if you withhold out of the TDS, withhold out of the last month rent, what happens? The TDS quantified by applying 20% under 194 IB is more than the last month rent and are restricted to last month rent. Restricted to last month rent. And here rent means rent paid for use of land, building, or both under lease, sublease, tenancy, or any other agreement or arrangement. Land and building is only covered. Plant, machinery, equipment, furniture and fittings are not covered. And the TDS shall be remitted within 30 days from the end of the month in which the tax was deducted at source. So with this, we are through with section 194 IB. Next section is 194J. 194J. Various payments are covered under 194J. Number 1, fee for professional services. Where the payment is fee for professional services and payee is a resident and payer is anybody and the payment is crossing 30,000, there is a TDS obligation at the rate of 10%. But if the payer is individual or HUF, okay, the TDS obligation under 194J arises in respect of fee for professional services only when such individual or HUF was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. So, what is the payment fee for professional services? Who is the payee? Resident. Payer is anybody. But if the payer is individual or HUF, the individual or HUF should have been liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. And if the fee for professional services paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited, okay, is crossing 30,000, then there is a TDS obligation for the payer. Tax shall be deducted at source at what rate? At the rate of 10%. Where the payment is fee for technical services and the payee is a resident, and the payer is anybody, and the amount of fee for technical services paid or credited, or the aggregate amount of fee for technical services paid likely to be paid or credited is crossing 30,000, then the payer has TDS obligation at the rate of 10%. But if the payee is a person in call center business, the TDS rate is 2%. And here also, if the payer is individual or HUF, the TDS obligation under 194J arises only when that individual or HUF was liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year. To consolidate, where the payment is fee for technical services, payee is a resident and payer is any person including an individual or HUF liable to tax audit in the immediately preceding financial year, and if the sum paid or credited, or if the aggregate amount of sum paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited is crossing 30,000, then the payer has TDS obligation at the rate of 10%. But if the payee is in call center business, then the TDS rate is 2%, not 10%. Next, third payment covered by 194J. Where the payment is royalty and payer is a resident, a payee is a resident, and payer is anybody other than an individual or HF. Other than an individual or HF. And if the sum paid or credited, if the aggregate amount of sum paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited crosses 30,000, then the payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. So what is the payment? Royalty. Who is the payee? Resident. Who is the payer? Any person, not being individual or HF. Individual or HF has no tedious obligation in respect of royalty. And if the aggregate amount of sum paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited is crossing 30,000, the payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. Next payment covered by 194J is non-compete fees. If the payment is non-compete fees and the payee is a resident and the payer is anybody other than an individual or HUF, and the aggregate amount of sum paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited is crossing 30,000, then the payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. The payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. Next payment covered by 184J, where the payment is fee for exclusivity of rights, fee for exclusivity of rights, and the payee is a resident, and the payer is anybody other than an individual or HUF, and the aggregate of sum paid or credited or likely to be paid or credited during the financial year is crossing 30,000, then the payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. Where the payment is director's remuneration and the payee is a resident and the payee is not an employee, then the payer has tedious obligation at the rate of 10%. For this director's remuneration, no threshold limit is prescribed. No threshold limit is prescribed. So where the payment is director's remuneration and the payee is a resident not being an employee, then the payer has tedious obligation under 194J at the rate of 10%, irrespective of the quantum of sum paid. Tax shall be deducted at source when at the time of payment or at the time of credit to the account of the payee in the books of accounts of the payer, whichever is earlier. The threshold limit is 30,000 and that is separate for each category. Separate threshold limit for each category and no threshold limit for director's remuneration. In 194J, the term fee for professional services used. The term fee for professional services is used. That is defined in 194J. Fee for professional services means payment for services rendered by a person in the course of carrying on a profession of law, medicine, engineering, accountancy, interior decoration, architecture, technical consultancy, advertising, or any other profession notified for the purpose of 194J or for the purpose of 44AA. 44AA. So, fee for professional services means payment made for services rendered by a person in the course of carrying on a profession of law, medicine, engineering, accountancy, interior decoration, architecture, technical consultancy, advertising, or any other profession notified for the purpose of 194J or 44AA. Sorry, what are the professions notified for the purpose of 44AA? film artist, information technology professional, company secretary, authorized representative. So profession of film artist, profession of information technology, profession of company secretary, profession of authorized representative, these are all notified for the purpose of 44AA. 44A. What are all the professions notified for the purpose of 44AA? Profession of information technology, profession of film artist, profession of authorized representative, profession of company secretary. And film artist in Sonna, it is not just actor or actress. The term is wide enough to cover actor, cameraman, director, music director, art director, dance director, editor, singer, lyrics writer, story writer, screenplay writer, dialogue writer, dress designer. Ittana peru film artist da. To them, if you are making payment, you have obligation to deduct tax at source. What are the professions notified for the purpose of 194J? Sportsperson, umpire, referee, coach, trainer, team physician, physiotherapist, event manager, commentator, anchor, sports columnist. Okay, these are all the professions notified for the purpose of 194J. What are they? Sportsperson, umpire, referee, coach, trainer, team physician, physiotherapist, commentator, event manager, anchor, okay, sports columnist. But not every profession is coming under 194J. Profession of teaching is not coming within 194J. Profession of sculpture doesn't come. Profession of painter doesn't come. Music, dance, these are all not coming within the ambit of 194J. So not the amount paid for every professional service do come under 194J. Now, there are some aspects which we need to discuss. Listen. If the director is an employee, okay, his remuneration shall be subjected to TDS under 192, not under 194J, not under 194J. Next is, where an individual or HF is paying fee for professional services and that is exclusively for personal purposes. Where an individual or HUF pays fee for professional services and that is exclusively for personal purposes, then the individual or HUF has no TDS obligation. Has no TDS obligation. Example, okay, a person wants divorce from his wife. He is approaching advocate. To the advocate he is paying legal fee. So the legal fee is what? Fee for professional services. But it is exclusively for what? Personal purpose. It shall not be subjected to TDS. Where legal fee is paid to advocate regarding division of family property, this is also fee for professional services, but it is exclusively for personal purposes. It shall not be subjected to TDS. See this example codified here. Mr. X, a chartered accountant with roaring practice. Abdina, this suggests that every year his gross receipts was more than 50 lakhs. Is a tax oddity. He pays 2 lakhs, more than 30,000 as legal fee, which is fee for professional services, to Y an advocate in connection with securing divorce from his wife. Still there is no TDS obligation. Reason being, this is purely for personal purposes, exclusively for personal purposes. Succeeded a lot in his professional life, miserably failed in personal life. You should learn to balance. X, a leading advocate, underwent heart surgery. And in this connection, he paid 5 lakhs to Apollo Hospital. So this is fee for professional services, okay, but still it is purely for personal purpose. No obligation to deduct tax at source under 194J. No obligation to deduct tax at source, because it is exclusively for personal purpose. Next is, you should know meaning of the term fee for technical services. Fee for technical services. The term fee for technical services is used in 194J, and it is also defined in 194J explanation. The explanation requires us to import the meaning of the term fee for technical services from explanation 2 to section 9 subsection 1 class 7. So in 194J the term fee for technical services is used, and explanation to 194J says the term fee for technical services shall have the same meaning as it is having in explanation 2 to 917. Abdina, we are importing the meaning of the term fee for technical services, okay, from 917 explanation 2 to 194J. Same meaning we should have for this term. Fee for technical services means consideration for managerial, technical or consultancy services. Fee for technical services means what? Consideration for managerial, technical or consultancy services. And the term also includes, fee for technical services includes consideration for provision of services of technical or other personnel. So we are providing you technical or other personnel, for that you are giving us consideration, that is also fee for technical services. Fee for technical services shall include consideration for provision of technical or other personnel. However, the term fee for technical services excludes consideration for any construction, assembly or mining or like project. Fee for technical services excludes consideration for any construction, assembly, mining or like project. It also excludes consideration which is chargeable to tax in the hands of recipient under the head salary, where your employee is a technical person and he is rendering services to you pursuant to contract of employment. Though the services rendered by him are technically in nature, the amount paid by you is only salary and it is not fee for technical services, because the recipient is receiving the amount pursuant to contract of employment. For him it is salary. If any amount which is chargeable to tax under the head salary, then it shall not be treated as fee for technical services. So fee for technical services shall exclude consideration for any construction, assembly, mining or like project, and it shall also exclude consideration which is chargeable to tax under the head salary. So this definition elaborately we will discuss in non-residence chapter, taxation of non-resident. There I will discuss detailedly about fee for technical services. There every segment I will give you illustration. This definition if you just hear, okay, it is sufficient now. The term royalty is defined in explanation to 194J as under. The term royalty shall have the same meaning as it has in explanation 2 to 916. Explanation 2 to 916. That means we are importing meaning of the term royalty into 194J from explanation 2 to 916. Royalty means payment made for allowing exploitation of industrial intellectual property rights. It is what? A payment made for allowing exploitation of industrial intellectual property rights. Industrial intellectual property rights. If you are allowing your industrial intellectual property rights to be exploited by me, for that whatever consideration I am giving to you is royalty. What is industrial intellectual property right? Patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, process, trademark, or any other similar property. This is industrial intellectual property rights. What are they? Patent, invention, model, design, secret formula, process, trademark, or any other similar property. Where payment is made for allowing exploitation of industrial intellectual property rights, okay, it is royalty. Where payment is made for allowing exploitation of copyright, then that is also royalty. What is copyright? Copyright is nothing but bundle of exclusive rights which are available to the creator or author. So if you are creating any literary, artistic or scientific work, in your creation you have bundle of exclusive rights conferred on you under the Copyrights Act. Under the Copyrights Act, a bundle of exclusive rights, okay, in literary or artistic or scientific work created by you, okay, is cast on you. You are getting that. So that is copyright. Where, for example, if I am authoring a book and the author and the creator of the book, okay, I will get bundle of exclusive rights over such book. I will get bundle of exclusive rights over such book. Like I can make multiple copies of books. Only I can store it in any form as I like. Only I can translate. Only I can shoot a cinematograph film on such book. Or only I can sell it or give it on lease. Everything could be done only by me. So copyright is nothing but bundle of exclusive rights in literary, artistic or scientific work made available to the creator, under the Copyrights Act. For example, if I am authoring a book, I have copyright, but Sitaraman Co wants to publish that book, so I am giving them publishing rights. So that means they are exploiting my copyright. Okay, only I have the right to publish, but I am allowing them to publish the books and make money. I am allowing my copyright to be commercially exploited by Sitaraman Co. For that, Sitaraman Co makes me some payment. That is what? Royalty. That is royalty. So payment made for allowing exploitation of copyright, or payment made for allowing access to information about use of or working of industrial intellectual property rights. Payment made for allowing access to the information about use of or working of industrial intellectual property rights. We are not making payment for use of the industrial intellectual property rights. We are making payment for having access to the information about the use of industrial intellectual property rights. Or we are making payment for allowing access to the information about working of industrial intellectual property rights. Correct? That is also royalty. Or where any payment is made for getting right to use any industrial or commercial or scientific equipment, where we are making payment for securing right to use industrial or commercial or scientific equipment. If you are making a payment for getting right to use industrial or commercial or scientific equipment, That is royalty. That is royalty. Where you are making payment for ancillary services, okay, incidental to this, that is also royalty. So elaborately about this, we will have a detailed discussion in taxation of non-residents. Okay, this much is sufficient at this level. Then explanation 4 to 916 is creating a fiction. What fiction? If you are making payment for acquiring a standardized software, off the shelf software, that is also deemed to be royalty. Software payments are regarded as royalty. If you are making payment for acquisition of a standardized software, that is royalty. See, there is a difference between copyright and copyrighted article. Copyright and copyrighted article. I will give you an example, you understand. I am authoring a book, RSN is authoring a book. He is the author of the book. He is having bundle of exclusive rights under the copyright. But Sitaram & Co is willing to publish my book. I am giving the publishing rights to them. I am allowing them to publish my books. That means I am allowing my copyright to be exploited. And whatever they are making payment to me is royalty. Because this is payment for allowing exploitation of copyright. Copyright. But Sitaram & Co is publishing the book, na? It is printing the book, selling. Na? This book is a copyrighted article. Is a copyrighted article. The students who are purchasing the book, they are making payment not for copyright, they are making payment for what? Copyrighted article. And whatever payment they are making to the Sitaram & Co is a business receipt for Sitaram & Co. It is not copyright. It is not royalty. It is not royalty. See, RSN, the author, allows Sitaram & Co to publish the book. Thereby is allowing exploitation of copyright by Sitaram & Co. The copyright of RSN is exploited by Sitaram & Co. For that, RSN is getting payment from Sitaram & Co. That is royalty. But what Sitaram & Co. does? Using that copyright, publishes the book, sells the book. This book is what? A copyrighted article. When it is selling the book to the student, whatever money it is receiving is not royalty for Sitaram & Co. It is only business receipts. Correct? Why? Because students, they are only getting the right to read the book. They cannot even take photocopy of the book without the permission of the copyright owner. Correct? So they have the right to use the book only, okay, for the purpose for which it is intended. They can purchase the book, read, okay, enrich their knowledge. That's all. Okay, other rights are not available to the student. Correct? Na? Students, they make payment for getting the copyrighted article. They don't make payment for copyright. So therefore, okay, the amount earned by Sitaram & Co is not royalty. Amount earned by RSN is only royalty. RSN earns money for allowing Sitaram & Co to commercially exploit his copyright. And Sitaram & Co earns money for selling a copyrighted article. So what Sitaram & Co earns is not royalty, business receipt. What RSN is earning is royalty. Correct? So where the software developer sells a standardized software to the end user, what transpires is only sale of a copyrighted article. Software developer doesn't transfer, okay, gives the copyright to the end user. He is not allowing commercial exploitation of copyright to the end user. A software developer is developing software and it's its creation in which he is having bundle of exclusive rights. Those rights are not made available to end user. Clear? Na? So the end user doesn't have right to modify it, doesn't have right to adapt it, doesn't have right to improvise it, doesn't even have the access to the source code. Okay, so what he gets is only a copyrighted article. He is purchasing a copyrighted article. He has no access to the copyright. Correct? So when the end user makes payment to the software developer, what he pays is only a payment for a copyrighted article, not a payment for exploiting copyright. For the software developer, this is a business receipt and not royalty. This is not a royalty, actually speaking. Clear? Because if you see, if you are downloading any software, before using it, we need to electronically sign standard end user license agreement. That's the agreement here. Okay, we will not even read. Okay, agree, next, agree, like this we will do, and we will start using it. And that standard end user license agreement, if you see, that gives you only a limited right, non-exclusive right to use it for a specific purpose. Okay, so you don't have right to modify the software, you don't have right to adapt it, you don't have right to improvise it, you don't have access to the source code. Hey, you don't have even right to make multiple copies in different systems owned by you, computer systems owned by you. Correct? You have right to use only in one system for a limited purpose, permitted in the standard end user license agreement, and that too a non-exclusive right is given to you. So when you are purchasing a standardized software, okay, when you are making payment for the software developer, it's a business receipt, because this is a receipt for selling a copyrighted article. This is not a royalty which is earning for allowing, okay, exploitation of copyright in the article. Correct? But still, okay, a fiction is created in explanation 4 to section 9 subsection 1 class 6. What fiction? If you are purchasing software, okay, the software payment is deemed to be royalty. So இப்போ ஃபிக்ஸ் பண்ணிக்க வேண்டியது என்னன்னா, சாஃப்ட்வேர் பேமெண்ட்ஸ் ஆர் டீம்டு டு பி ராயல்ட்டி. சாஃப்ட்வேர் பேமெண்ட்ஸ் ஆர் டீம்டு டு பி ராயல்ட்டி. அதில் யுக்தி, லாஜிக்கு, விசாரம், ரீசனிங், நத்திங் இஸ் ரிக்வயர்ட். சாஃப்ட்வேர் பேமெண்ட்ஸ் ஆர் ராயல்ட்டி. தட்ஸ் ஆல். டு தட் எக்ஸ்டென்ட் they made it simple by creating a fiction where an advertisement agency is making payment to model, artist or photographers in connection with production of advertisement program, that shall come under 194J, already discussed in the context of 194C. Correct? Next is, now the insurance companies which are engaged in health insurance business, which are engaged in what business? Health insurance business. Okay, they do come under, they do come with cashless hospitalization scheme. They do come with what? Cashless hospitalization scheme. So there are various mediclaim insurance policy schemes mooted by the insurance companies, okay, to be more competitive. So insurance company engaged in health insurance business, they come with attractive cashless hospitalization scheme whereby the insured, okay, if he is suffering from any disease or ailment and for that he requires medical treatment, he can get admitted in the hospital covered by the scheme without making any payment, and he will be provided medical treatment. And then the hospital covered by the scheme which has provided medical treatment to the insured will, okay, submit the claim papers to, okay, third party administrator appointed by the insurance company. A insurance company, for speeding up, okay, the process of processing the claim papers and settling the claim, okay, has outsourced this work to, okay, persons called third party administrators. These third party administrators will receive the claim papers from the hospitals covered by the scheme, and that will be processed by the third party administrator as per the scheme, and it will be settled. The claims will be settled by the third party administrator, and the third party administrator will get the amount reimbursed from the insurance company. Apart from that, they will also get some service charges. This is how it operates. Now the third party administrator, when, okay, makes payment to the hospitals for settling the claim, has tedious obligation under 194J. And this is a payment made for medical services. This is what given here. Third party administrators, TPS na, third party administrators have obligation to deduct tax at source under 194J on payments made to hospital on behalf of insurance company. That you need to note. Next is see, you are a professional. You are rendering professional services. You are a professional rendering what? Professional services. From your client, you will be collecting fee for professional services plus GST. The client should deduct tax at source only on the fee component, not on the GST. So no TDS on the GST collected, provided if it is indicated separately in the bill. So this is CBDT circular 23/2017. So see this, wherever in terms of agreement or contract between the payer and the payee, the component of GST on services comprised in the amount payable to a resident is indicated separately, tax shall be deducted at source on the amount paid or payable without including the GST on services component. So that means when the professional is raising bill, in his bill, his fee and GST is mentioned separately. The client, when he is making payment, okay, he has to deduct tax at source. He should apply the TDS rate only on the fee component, not on the GST. Next is another important point. See, these professionals, they not only get fee for professional services, they also get reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses. So when you are doing an audit for your client, you not only get the fee for professional services, for the expenses which you have incurred, for doing the audit. For example, you may travel to a place, you may stay there in a hotel, etc. These are all expenses, traveling expenses, stay expenses, lodging, boarding and lodging expenses. Everything which you incur will be reimbursed by the client. So that means from the tenant, you will be getting three things: fee, GST, and reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses. One thing is clear, on the GST there is no TDS, but on the reimbursement portion, on the reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses, on that, whether the client has TDS obligation, answer is no. If it is mentioned separately, if it is through a separate bill, but one single consolidated bill if you do then tax shall be deducted at source on the consolidated amount. So where fee is claimed along with reimbursement in one bill, tax is to be deducted on the gross amount of the bill inclusive of reimbursement. However, if the claim of the fee and the reimbursement of expenses is by way of separate bills, for reimbursement separate bill, for fee separate bill, no tax needs to be deducted on the reimbursement amount. Correct? So it's highly technical here. It's all depends on how you prepare the bill. If you prepare a separate bill for reimbursement, then there is no TDS. If you prepare one single bill in which you raise the amount to be paid for the services as well as the reimbursement, then on the entire amount tax should be deducted at source. This is what the CBDT circular clarifies. Next is, see this. In order to remove the cascading effect on account of tax deduction at multi levels, the central government, in exercise of its powers under 197A subsection 1F, through notification 21/2012, has clarified as follows. So now I am going to discuss notification 21/2012. See this. See my finger also. There is software developer, is developing the software, sells them to the distributor. Software developer develops the software, sells it to the distributor. The distributor resells to the end user. The distributor resells the software to the end user. Correct? This is happening. Software developer develops the software, sells it to the distributor. Distributor resells the software to the end user. Correct? Then the end user makes payment to the distributor. Distributor makes payment to the software developer. Both are software payments. Both are software payments. Payments for purchasing the software. Payment for purchasing the software. So this is also royalty. This is also royalty. As per explanation 4 to 9 subsection 1 class 6. This is royalty. Now the end user, when he is making payment, software payments to the distributor, he has no TDS obligation under 194J. He has no TDS obligation under 194J. When? If the following conditions are satisfied. Number 1, the software was sold by the distributor to the end user without doing any modification. Without doing any modification. So the distributor sells the software, resells the software to the end user without doing any modification. This is condition number 1. Condition number 2, the distributor, when he made payment to the software developer, he deducted tax at source under 194J or 195 depending upon the residential status of the software developer. Software developer is a non-resident, he should have deducted tax at source under 195. If the software developer is a resident, the distributor should have deducted tax at source under 194J. 194J. This is condition number 2. Condition number 3, the distributor should give a declaration to this effect to the end user. What declaration? When we made payment to the software developer, on that we have deducted tax at source promptly either under 194J or 195. Like this, a declaration should be given by the distributor to the end user. And you should also declare his PAN to the end user. You should reveal his PAN to the end user. Then the end user, when he makes payment to the distributor, he has no obligation to deduct tax at source under 194J. Under section 194J. To consolidate the entire discussion, software developer develops the software, sells the software to the distributor. The distributor in turn resells the software to the end user. The end user makes payment to the distributor, which is a software payment, it is royalty. And the distributor makes payment to the software developer. That payment is also a software payment, it's a royalty. The end user, when he is making payment to the distributor, he has no TDS obligation under 194J. Royalty na 194J will come na, but he has no TDS obligation if the following conditions are fulfilled. Condition number 1, the distributor resells the software to the end user without doing any modification. Condition number 1. Condition 2, the distributor, when he made payment to the software developer, on that he has deducted tax at source either under 194J or 195. And the end user, to the end user, the distributor is making a declaration to this effect and gives his PAN. Then the end user, when he makes payment to the distributor, he has no TDS obligation under 194J. This should be understood. So what we are discussing is various issues in 194J. SkyCell Communications Limited, Madras, where standard facilities are made available to the public at large for a cost using sophisticated equipment. Where standard facilities are made available to the public at large for a cost using a sophisticated equipment, this doesn't amount to rendering of technical services. Doesn't amount to rendering of technical services because you are providing a facility. So this is not to be treated as fee for technical services. Payment should not be treated as fee for technical services. 194J will not get attracted. Okay, for example, internet bandwidth services, mobile phone services. Okay, these are all facilities. Okay, not services, technical services. So these are standard facilities made available to the public at large for a cost using sophisticated equipment. So even though the development in technology is used for providing these facilities, you are using sophisticated equipment, scientific equipments for providing these facilities, still what you render is not technical services. You are only providing a facility. Payment is not to be regarded as fee for technical services. So 194J shall not come. Internet bandwidth services, mobile phone services are not technical services. So this is given here. Bharati Cellular Limited, Supreme Court. Asasi company is a telecom company. Asasi company is a telecom company. From the Department of Telecommunication, it has obtained telecom license. It has obtained what? Telecom license to operate within specified circles. To operate within specified circles. So Asasi is a telecom company. From Department of Telecommunication, it has obtained telecom license by paying license fee. By paying license fee, it is now having the right to operate telecommunication services within specified circles. Fine. So if the subscriber of Asasi's network, Airtel subscriber of Asasi's network, is calling subscriber of any other network, Jio, subscriber of any other network, Idea, etc. So where the subscriber of Asasi's network makes a call to the subscriber of other network, this call is routed through interconnection points called ports. It gets routed through interconnection points called ports, and these ports are owned by either BSNL or MTNL. It is owned by BSNL or MTNL. So Asasi now using in the interconnection points or ports owned by BSNL or MTNL. For that, the Asasi Telecom company has to pay some amount to BSNL or MTNL called port access charges. Port access charges or interconnection point charges. This is pursuant to an agreement which is regulated by TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. So if the subscriber of Asasi's network has to call subscriber of another network, the call has to get routed through interconnection points or ports owned by BSNL or MTNL. Further, the Asasi Telecom company has to pay port access charges or interconnection point charges to MTNL or BSNL pursuant to an agreement which is regulated by TRAI. Whether these port access charges are fee for technical services, should they be subjected to TDS under 194J? This is the issue. The matter went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court says the term fee for technical services is defined in explanation to 194J, and it is defined to mean it is defined to include the same meaning which the term is having in explanation 2 to 917. What meaning is assigned to this expression in 917 explanation 2? The same meaning should be assigned here also. This is what explanation to 194J says. So therefore, we shall enter into section 9, subsection 1, class 7, explanation 2, which defines the term fee for technical services, correct? It means consideration. It means what? Consideration for what? Managerial or technical or consultancy services. It's consideration for managerial, technical or consultancy services. The word technical is sandwiched between the words managerial and consultancy. The word technical is sandwiched between the words managerial and consultancy. It is sandwiched between managerial and consultancy. Correct? So, when a word is sandwiched between two words, okay, the word which is in between shall take color from the adjacent words. Shall take color from the adjacent words. Okay, the same shade will follow here also. For rendering managerial services, there is human element. Human element is involved in rendering managerial services. It is not automized. Managerial services cannot be automized, correct? Human element is involved. Similarly, consultancy services, rendition of which also involves human element. Since the word technical is placed between managerial and consultancy, okay, both of which involves human element, okay, so the word technical should also take the same color. Only those services, okay, which involves human element could be understood as technical services, could be technical services. That means whatever service you want to classify as technical service, okay, will get classified as technical service only when it involves human element, because it is sandwiched between managerial and consultancy. So managerial services, the rendition of which involves human element, same is the case in case of consultancy services. Only those technical services, the rendition of which involves human element, okay, will come within the ambit of the definition, correct? So in this case, okay, giving access to port or interconnection point, giving access to port or interconnection point doesn't involve human element, it is automized. Okay, when a person having subscriber to the Airtel network calls Jio network, okay, a subscriber of another network, okay, there is no person connecting this call, routing this call through the interconnection point. No human element is involved. Okay, it is automized. It is automized, correct? So giving access to the port or interconnection point doesn't involve human element. So therefore, this is not technical services. So interconnection point or port access charges are not fee for technical services. Therefore, 194J doesn't apply. Doesn't apply. So this you need to note. Next is Kotak Services Limited Supreme Court Judgment. Kotak Services Limited Supreme Court Judgment. Assasi is in the business of, okay, share broking depositories and mobilizing deposits, marketing public issues. Assasi is a member of BSE, Bombay Stock Exchange, and he is in the business of what? Share broking. He is in the business of what? Share broking. Okay, in the business of depositories, mobilizing deposits and marketing of public issues. Okay, such Assasi, for carrying out the share broking activity, is using the fully automated online trading facility. The Assasi company, which is a member of BSE, for carrying out its share broking business activity, is relying on the fully automated online trading facility provided by BSE. For that, it is paying transaction charges. It is paying transaction charges. This fully automated online trading facility, okay, is to be used by all members of BSE in respect of every transaction that they are entering into. Nothing is special, nothing is unique, nothing is exclusively provided by the BSE. Okay, general facility is provided to all the members of BSE. Fully automated online trading facility is provided. For that, Assasi company has to pay transaction charges. So the issue here is whether the transaction charges should be regarded as fee for technical services. Should they be subjected to TDS under 194J? Should this be subjected to what? TDS under 194J. This is the issue. Okay, the matter went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court clarifies, okay, these services are provided to every member in respect of every transaction entered into. Nothing is special, exclusive or customized in the service that is rendered by the BSc. This is a facility rather than a service. So, nothing special, exclusive or customized. It is provided to every member in respect of every transaction entered into. Correct? A member who wants to conduct his daily business in BSc has no option but to avail such services. Correct? The word technical is sandwiched between managerial and consultancy. Okay, so the technical services like managerial and consultancy services are in the nature of specialized services made available by the service provider to the caterer, made available by the service provider to cater to the special needs of the customer as may be felt necessary. Something when it is routinely done for all customers regularly, okay, and nothing special, exclusive or unique, then that is not technical service. Technical services like managerial and consultancy services are in the nature of specialized services made available by the service provider to cater to the special needs of the customer as may be felt necessary. It is the above feature that would distinguish or identify a service provider from a facility offered. However, there is no exclusivity in the services rendered by the BSc, and each and every member has to avail services in the normal course of trading in securities in the BSc. Therefore, these transaction charges are not to be regarded as fee for technical services. Accordingly, 194J has no role to play. 194J has no role to play. So this you need to understand. So many important case laws given in the institute publication in the context of 194J, which will be tested, we cannot predict. Manipal Health Systems Private Limited, 2015, Karnataka. Once again selected case. Assassi company is running hospitals. It is hiring so many doctors who will be providing medical services to the patients coming to the hospital. And the Assassi hospital will make payment to these doctors. In the relevant financial year, the survey wing conducted survey under 133A in the hospital to verify the TDS compliance. The survey wing found that the Assassi company has deducted tax at source under 194J at the rate of 10% on the payment made to the doctors, treating them as fee for professional services. Correct? But the assessing officer is of the department is of the opinion that the tax should have been deducted at source under 192. The assessing officer TDS is of the opinion that the tax should have been deducted at source under 192, not under 194J, because between the doctors and the Assassi company, okay, there is employer-employee relationship. The relevant section is 192. This is salary. It should have been subjected to TDS under 192. Okay, and tax was deducted at source under 194J, treating it as fee for professional services. As a result, there is a short deduction. Therefore, the hospital is Assassi in default, disallowance, interest, collection and recovery, penalty, like this they started. Correct? So the matter went to the court. Whether the payment made to the doctors are fee for professional services or salary. See, how do we determine all these things? If there is employer-employee relationship between the doctors and hospital, then it is salary. The relevant section is 192. But if there is no employer-employee relationship, it's a contract for service, then it should come under 194J. Contract pursuant to which services are provided. If it is contract of service, then there is employer-employee relationship. Then the payment is salary. The TDS should be under 192. If it is contract for service, then there is principal to principal relationship. It is fee for professional services. Tax should have been deducted at source under 194J. Correct? So we need to see whether it is contract of service or contract for service. Whether there is employer-employee relationship or not, we need to see. There are various tests for deciding, okay, as to whether there is employer-employee relationship, like independence test, control test, intention test, but no test is conclusive. Okay, we need to decide only based on the factual matrix. Sorry. Let us see the terms of contract between the doctors and the hospital. Okay, it says the hospital will not pay any time guaranteed payment to the doctors. It will not pay any time guaranteed payment to the doctors. Correct? That means every month fixed salary la onnu kediyadu. It all depends upon the number of patients and the treatment given to them. So in a month no patient has visited, then no remuneration only. Remuneration depends upon the number of patients and the treatment given to them. The timing of the doctor is fixed. Evening 6 to 8:30 or 4 to 8:30, like this timing is fixed. And no doctor who serves the company can have a private practice, and he cannot also serve in any other hospital. Then for him no gratuity, no provident fund, no leave travel concession. Like this the terms are condensed and given to you. Perusal of the terms suggests that there exists contract for service. The relationship is not employer-employee. Okay, there is principal to principal relationship. The payment is salary, not salary. Payment is not salary. It is fee for professional services. 192 shall not come, 194J only shall come. But you are telling that you should not do private practice, you should not serve elsewhere. Timing is fixed. All these things creates a confusion that he is an employee. No. Why the timing should be fixed? There should be some predictability. How the patient will know whether the doctor will be available or not unless you put the time. And moreover, if you allow you private practice or if you allow to practice elsewhere, you may get in touch with the patients here and take the patients there. Henceforth, don't come to this clinic. I am near to your house in T Nagar only. Come there and do. So they will steal the patients. So to avoid that, we are putting condition that you cannot do private practice or you cannot serve elsewhere. But this should not confuse you that there is employer-employee relationship. There is only, it's a contract for service, not contract of service.